Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Sunday morning. Good morning, folks. Joining us from Miami, Florida, where he's got an afternoon game with the Spurs and Heat today. That's why we're doing it early, because the Spurs got to get to Paris. And I'll take over from there, Bontemps. Thank you very much. Tim Bontemps.
It's big time and everybody, per usual.
So I roll. Somebody's got to go work 20 hours a day in Paris. Joining us from Dallas, Texas.
Tough life.
Where he's recovering from his 12-year-old twin's birthday party overnight. I'm sure it was one of those slumber parties, Ban McMahon.
Howdy, partners.
I still remember my 12th birthday party, slumber party.
Listen, this one was a party bus to chicken and pickle. And
we didn't have a party bus.
It was a whole ordeal. Bunch of smart mouth punk kids. It's amazing. I haven't smacked one on upside the head. The morning is young, though. We might want to pod for a while to let these kids get the hell out before I come back out there.
We should have them all in.
No, we should not.
Speaking of rough nights, I don't know if you guys saw, but the Sixers lost again.
Oh, shocker. The top Sixers.
Oh, my gosh. So, Bontemps, you've devoted so much time in your life traveling up and down I-95 for the last few years, including this year.
True.
And since we last spoke to everybody, they announced that Joel Embiid's foot sprain, which...
Oh, good news here. Good news.
Yeah. Joel Embiid's foot sprain is healed. That was actually in the press release.
Great. That's great. Great.
I was like, okay, he'll be upgraded. I was waiting for the second sentence, which he'll be upgraded to, questionable or something. And then they said, however, his knee is swollen again and he's out for another 7 to 10 days as they go on the road.
Not so good news.
And they lost again. They've lost 5 in a row. They've lost 8 out of 10. And Bontemps, this is on the horizon of being one of the worst disasters for a season in the modern NBA. I don't know if I would quite say it's Lakers when they got Dwight Howard and Steve Nash. That this is going to be fun, because I don't really think that was quite the same. Kobe ain't on this roster, but this was champions of the offseason. Let's go. Let's compete with the Celtics. And, we're having conversations about worrying about their top 6 protected pick. This is a grade A disaster that's unfolding here in Philly.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the season is over today, if not for the fact that the Bulls this week, we'll see what happens Sunday against Portland, but in their last 3 games, the Bulls have lost to the Pelicans, who've gone on a nice streak lately. They got smacked by the Hawks on a Wednesday when this was the Hawks starting lineup. Dyson Daniels, Vic Krejci, Keaton Wallace, David Roddy, and Clint Capella at home. Not exactly great. And then they lost to Charlotte on Friday. So the Bulls, who are only a couple games ahead in 10th place, seem like they might be starting to enter the mode of trying to keep their own top 10 pick.
The Bulls are making damn sure they're not going to send the number 11 pick in the draft to the San Antonio Spurs.
They're doing their best to make McMahon look wrong. However, all that being said, we've talked about the stretch the Spurs are in, the Sixers are in, this 13-game stretch for the trade deadline. They're 0-3. They're playing Milwaukee on Sunday. They have all these guys out.
Real quick, Paul George sat out, and this pod will go up and it will be known, but Paul George sat out Saturday's game with groin tightness, it said. Is that just him skipping back-to-backs, or is he actually injured?
We'll find out on Sunday, I suppose.
Right.
The whole thing is just
because you had a game this last week where Paul George warmed up before the game, and then it was
he was probable, and then he was out.
Well, the good news is there's only 3.5 years left on his max contract.
Yeah, there is no good news at this point with the Sixers. And like I said,
2024-25 Sixers, there is no good news. That's the team video, sorry.
I have been convinced their season would be done when this stretch is over, because they'd be so far out of 10th that their only option would be to try to keep their pick. Chicago may make it so that by default, someone has to finish 10th, and maybe the Sixers will finish 10th if they can ever get their guys healthy. But I don't know how anybody could look at this team right now and think anything other than this season is completely cooked, which is a remarkable thing to say on January 19th about a team that, was right there with anybody in the offseason, had three guys that made all-star teams last year and were three of the top 20, 25 players in the league on their team. Like, I don't think they were going to beat Boston, but certainly we thought they were going to be a team that was a home court advantage team in the playoffs, or at worst in the top 6 in the East, not in the bottom 5, and pondering the attempt to try to keep their top 6 protected pick. That, by the way, if they end up with the 8th or 9th pick in a loaded draft, it goes to Oklahoma City, is the latest part of the treasure trove of assets that Sam Presti and co have.
The Thunder have gotten a little bit unlucky since they started acquiring top picks. Like, the Rockets, it was like right on the edge there where they were going to get that Rockets pick, and then the Rockets were able to get into there was, I feel like there was
jumped
another
up. The Jalen Green pick became the pick that they would have had.
I feel like there was another one where they were like right on the edge and then didn't get it.
The Jazz last year, but yeah, the Thunder,
that's a little different though.
Yeah, the Jazz aggressively made sure they're like the Jazz pulled what the Bulls are doing right now. Like, let's take a turn and make sure we keep this pick. But yeah, the Thunder will. It's crazy. This team might win, I don't know, 650 games over the next decade and have a lottery pick most years. It's insane.
It's nuts.
And like the Sixers, man, at this point, I think the best case scenario for them is that they're able to keep their top 6 protected pick. I'm not sure how you're going to be able to pull that off because.
Well, they're going to be somewhere in the top 10 record-wise. It's just whether they get lucky in the draft lottery or not. And under the new rules, there's a much better chance of that than there used to be. But, we're talking about an extraordinarily unlucky team. Are we going to bet on their luck turning now and they end up with the number 1 pick in this draft? It seems unlikely to me.
Well, they've had the Tyrese Maxey luck, and that's about it.
That's true. That's true.
The one sliver of good news they had season-ending knee surgery with Jared McCain, but like forget about like just the picture this season, and do they somehow weasel their way into keeping their pick, dude? Paul George, the Clippers are looking very smart for not wanting to go full boat max on him, and Joel Embiid, how much money is he owed? The guy's played 13 games this year.
Because there's been so many. Because the Sixers have to be very careful with how they announce the injuries with Joel. It's something it's very delicate with him. And also, just because there's been so many different rounds of it that it can be desensitizing. I think people are losing track of the fact that he keeps missing games with this knee swelling, and they're not announcing an injury. He hasn't gotten hurt. His knee is just broken right now.
It's going to be chronic through the rest of his career. The guy played 39 games last year, and honestly, that's going to be a number I'm not sure that he reaches a lot in his career, unfortunately. And this is a dude who, with this extension, is owed $67 million in 28, 29. Yep. The Ben Simmons contract for a long time was the worst contract in the NBA. The Sixers have 2 contenders right now.
This has been Paul George's worst season since 2015-16 when he was he's still coming off the broken leg, I think.
That doesn't even count. I think he played 10 games that season.
Or maybe it was, oh yeah.
that was at the end of the year.
That's right. You're right. But he's having one of the worst seasons of his career.
Yeah, he's averaging 17 points and he is shooting 42% from the floor, and he's played, he's at least played the majority of their games. But again, the hope with Paul George is he's going to be able to play 60 plus games. The hope at this point with Embiid is maybe he can get to 50. And again, the idea that this team is just going to kind of load manage their way into a top seed and, boom, turn everything on. Off time.
They have had every single guy on the team shoot horribly on wide open shots, including Paul George, which has been a big part of the problem when they've had guys on the court. And then, like, you know, the fact that Joel in particular has just not been available. Like, that's you said before the season, Joel was going to play 13 of the first 40 games. You'd probably think the Sixers were better than this, but it's not like you'd think they were going to be 28 and 12. So, when Paul George has missed more than half the games, and like you said, Jared McCain was the one bright spot they had. He's now out for the year. Him and Gershon Yabusele are the two guys who played above their expected level the whole year. Tyrese Maxey has been a disappointment. He has played far below the level you'd hope for him, despite the fact that his numbers overall are fairly gaudy. He has not shot the ball well. He has not played great. So, yeah, I mean, it's the season has gone as badly as it possibly could have in virtually every way. And that's how you're sitting here if you're the Sixers going into this game Sunday. If they lose, they're on pace to win 30 games and be firmly in the mix to, have some potentially lottery luck to keep their pick.
So let's just talk about that real quick, because I just want to focus on the situation because, they're quote unquote not giving up right now. I mean, they're, I assume, trying to win these games. Right now, they have the 8th worst record in the league. There are 7 teams that have fewer wins than them.
And by the way, I don't think there's any way they get worse than 9th.
This is my point.
Yes, this is what I keep talking about with the standing stuff.
Yeah. So if you look at the teams that are quote unquote ahead of them, behind them, I guess, but ahead of them in the tankathon, Utah has 10 wins. I don't know if Utah. So the 76ers, as we do this pod, we'll see what happens on Sunday. They have 15. Okay. I'm not sure Utah is going to get to 15 wins before the end of February.
If they do, it'll be kicking and screaming. You want to
okay.
I would just say it this way, Brian, to save time. The 7 teams below them, Brooklyn, Portland, Charlotte, New Orleans, Utah, Toronto, and Washington. The one team I think that has a chance to pass them is New Orleans,
right?
Because they're now healthy. They're winning games. I think there's going to be some motivation to play their guys, play Zion Williamson when they get Brandon Ingram back, to play him. I think there's a world Philly gets to 7th. I don't think any of those other teams are going to be winning very many games the next 3 months. And the point I was making was the teams that are on the other side of them, San Antonio, Miami, Detroit, Phoenix, Golden State, Sacramento, those teams are going to be winning at a way higher clip than the Sixers are. So to me, they're going to be somewhere in the 7 to 9 range, depending on what happens to Chicago, depending on what happens to New Orleans, which is outside the top 6. And it all comes down to they're going to have a somewhere between 30 and 40% chance, depending on exactly where they land, to have a coin flip, ping pong ball situation go in their favor.
I mean, and you talk about like the biggest disaster seasons in recent NBA history. We can talk about some of the Brooklyn seasons, but this is the thing there was those were cases of, hey, this super team didn't want to stay together for a wide variety of reasons, whatever. Like that was a super team breaking up. This is a so-called super team that you're stuck with.
You're potentially stuck with.
Well, at least if this thing blows up, though, at least Brooklyn got a bunch of fodder for a rebuild. Now they had to go scramble to get their own picks back, but at least when they traded Kevin Durant, they got a haul. Now they had to trade Kyrie at a bargain basement discount price, which, by the way, Kyrie, after the game the other night, somebody asked him about the anniversary of the PJ Washington trade. He's like, when's the anniversary of my trade? He said, we won that trade. I was bad goods. He was kind of rubbing it in the Nets' face. But again, the point is, like, dude, you think they're getting a haul for Joel Embiid at this point when he's due $6 million at age 30 for Paul George?
I would never say that, but I would say that they have, unlike the Nets, who did not have their picks going forward, the Sixers, for the most part, I'm trying to look and see what picks they have out beyond this year. I think they have most of their picks going forward. They have several other picks coming in, including a future Clipper unprotected pick. And
well, yeah, other than this year's pick that they're
Well, no, listen, I'm just saying they have control of their pick. They have Tyrese Maxey, who is a very good young guard who's obviously had a rough year. Like they have they're not the Nets who were at that point were going to be at 0 with no picks going for 7 years. But I'm not trying to say this is some great situation. It's obviously rough, but they do, I think, have some potential outs. But the question, this is not the kind of conversation we were supposed to be having about the Sixers 40 games in the
Oh my
season.
God, that's what I'm saying.
Well, that's where we're at.
Well, okay, so if they were to finish right where they're at right now, and they have the 8th worst record, it's roughly a 25% chance of keeping their pick. They have a 25% chance of going into the top 4. And if you're Oklahoma City and you are looking at a 75% chance of a top 10 pick, you're signing up for that trade 1,000 times over.
Well, and if it doesn't convey this year, it's top 4 protected.
Well, not top 10 because it has to be outside the top.
Yeah, a 75% chance of a pick that would be somewhere between 7 and 9 or 10 or whatever.
Yeah, right. That's pretty amazing.
And again, if not this year, it's top 4 protected next year. Will things go better for the Sixers next year? I mean, they couldn't go worse, but
yeah, I mean, have to figure. I don't know. The biggest problem is, why is Joel Embiid's knee swelling? That's the biggest problem because he didn't get hurt. Like all these other times, we've seen him have these bad falls. Some of them have been freak injuries or whatever, but we saw him get hurt. Okay. He won the Olympic gold medal, took some time off. And when he went to go start playing basketball again a month or so later and ramping back up, it's not worked. And they're saying it's knee swelling, and I respect Joel protecting his medical information, but there is something that is causing that knee not to work. And that problem, without being an injury, is the biggest problem they've got.
And it's not like those things just go away as a massive human ages into his 30s. Like this is going to be a problem. And they acknowledged that before the season when Joel Embiid sat down with the USWB himself, and it was sunny out there. Where was that, Bon Temps? The Bahamas? One of your
Bahamas.
One of your boondoggles, as Wendy says, that you.
Oh yes, I have so many boondoggles. Yes.
But like basically
nothing like traveling up and down the Northeast in the winter for being the definition of a boondoggle.
Oh, he's in South Beach now, baby, just living the life. But I mean, they didn't put a number on it, but essentially they said, hey, the plan is Joel's going to play hopefully 50 something games, and then we'll flip the switch come playoff time. Like that was the hope.
It was. I would not say that was exactly the plan. I would not say this has gone the way I feel very comfortable saying this is not what the Sixers expected this plan to look like from the beginning.
No, again, because he's not on pace to play 50-something games. But when he's talking about, like, I'm punting on ever being an MVP again, basically he was saying, hey, I'm not in 65 games.
Well, look, I think it made sense from the beginning to say Joel Embiid was not going to play regular season back-to-backs. That does not mean, like, Joel, if he played every game and didn't play back-to-backs, like basically what Kawhi did, which is the comparison that I made at the time, and I think is what was sort of envisioned, Kawhi played 60 games. Okay, if Joel was on pace to play 60 games, the season would look very different than it looks now. That's the bottom line. So this has not gone the way the Sixers had envisioned.
Here's the only thing that's good news for the Sixers, within the team at least. The Washington Commanders are in the NFC Championship game.
Don't say that, because there's one person who's happy about that, Josh Harris, and I think
he's the guy making the decisions.
Well, okay. So Josh Harris is happy, and the entire city of Philadelphia potentially is going to be playing the Commanders next weekend. And let's just say that I have Sixers fans, friends that are not thrilled that Josh Harris owns the Commanders.
As I said, the Sixers organization, not the Sixers fans.
But that's not the Sixers organization.
This is the first time the Commanders have been in the NFC Championship game since McMahon was a juvenile delinquent. I mean, it's.
I was a juvenile delinquent well into my 30s. Well, listen, if Embiid was healthy the whole time, they'd be maybe a 500-ish team. They're 7-6 when he plays.
Oh God.
Well, when the three guys play and finish a game, they're 6-1. So
wow, I didn't know that number.
That's
all well and good, but that ain't coming anytime soon.
The key number there is not
played 7 games.
Yes,
Correct.
it's 7 out of
It's
40.
it's 9-24, which is the other 33 games. That's where we're at.
The team that beat them on Saturday, the Pacers, they, by the way, I believe are 7-1 in the new year. Best team in the NBA since the new year, or tied for. So let's keep an eye on those Pacers. I'm going to be spending some time with them over the next week in Paris. Also a
Believe.
team that is doing
I hope
pretty
you and
well.
Carlisle go eat some croissants together.
I believe 6-2 in their last 8 games, I think, or maybe 6-1. And Devin Booker, Bontemps, I think, should be getting lauded by Suns fans because about
Not
10
just me. Not just me.
Oh, I've been lumped in here. Hey,
Lumped in. We had the same opinion.
we did.
Yes,
We
we did.
did.
And by the way, the opinion is accurate.
I think CAA is going to throw like a shindig to honor us for inspiring this just liftoff by Booker recently.
Listen, if the All-Star rosters are picked from January 1st on, Devin Booker will be a starter in the All-Star game.
Well, and again, it was never is Devin Booker an All-Star caliber player, but All-Star game based on performance this season.
Correct.
So Booker had 35. They won in Detroit. They're 6-2 over their last 8 games. They had been 1-7 over their previous 8 games. Booker has scored 30 plus in 5 straight games, which is the second longest streak of his career. His longest streak is 7 games.
Honestly, that actually surprises me. That I thought he would have had some
me too.
longer ones, but okay.
The first game that Nick Richards played, they traded for him. He played in Detroit. And by the way, speaking of Detroit, real quick, and I have nothing bad to say about Mr. Isaiah Beef Stew Stewart.
Oh, you better not. You were playing with Legos like you did Miles Turner.
I'm pro Lego, buddy. Real men build Legos, especially with their children. So his branding Miles Turner less than for being a Legos guy, as he did the other day, I just won't stand for it. So
listen.
I side with Miles Turner. Also,
you side with Legos.
There was an amazing, I have a 7-year-old, so let's be honest. There was an amazing moment on NBA Today this last week where Derek Lively was on NBA Today, and in the middle of the interview, unplanned, Malika asked him about Legos, and he's like, "Oh, well, let me show you."
Oh yeah.
And he flipped his Zoom, his iPad around and showed her his Lego setup. Anyway,
big Lego guy.
Nick Richards, first game for the Suns on Saturday. How about a little 21-11?
Not bad. Off the bench, which I don't anticipate will be the case much longer.
So we'll see. I'm not going to base a lot on, for a one good game from Nick Richards, but the Suns, who needed to run hot, are running hot.
Now, if you want to have fun with,
hey, the Suns running hot, or is Devin Booker running hot?
Well, Devin Booker is running hot.
If you want to have the fun with when they're healthy, when KD and Booker both play, they're 19-7.
Yep.
Now, again, the problem is that's not that often. Also, they're 19-7, and that lineup or that duo, like the net rating, isn't what you would anticipate or want when you have a dual superstar duo out there. Remember, their 8-1 start was like just pulling game after game after game out in crunch time. The net rating is 4.1, which is, a bit better than middling, but 19-7, and two guys who can certainly get you buckets down the stretch. I think that it's so tough to see like how they can raise the ceiling of this team. Obviously, there's the whole Jimmy thing that's out there, and we've talked about just the challenges, the obstacles of making a deal like that happen. But you've got this weird thing now where Beal's kind of been, I don't know if ostracized is a fair word, but it's a big one. And I'd have to look it up to make sure I'm using it correctly, but it feels that way. Richards was a nice little swing to make a desperate upgrade on the center position.
one that sacrificed almost all their draft picks left. They had 3
Well,
second-round picks. They traded all of them to get them.
except for the 2031, which does.
Well, no, I know. I said their second-round picks.
Oh, yeah. And the 2031 first round pick, it's one of those things where, hey, that pick has value. It has a lot of value. Why does it have a lot of value? Because the Suns are like teams are forecasting the Suns 6 years out, saying, let's see, they've blown up the rest of their draft capital. Kevin Durant is nearing his late 30s. Like, what are the Suns going to look like 6 years out? Let's line up and try to figure out a way to get that pick. So that pick has value. Would it be wise to cash in the value of that pick for this roster? Well, there's all in as all in gets.
Well, listen, right now the Suns are out of the play-in in the West. And I know this is looking a bit far ahead, but I was just looking at their schedule. This is their schedule from March 2nd to the end of the year. Minnesota, Clippers, Denver, Dallas, Memphis, Houston, Sacramento, Lakers, Raptors, Bulls, and then Cavs, Bucks, Celtics, Wolves, Rockets, Bucks, Celtics, Knicks, Warriors, Thunder, Spurs, Kings. So 20 out of 22 games against teams with winning records and are all going to be expected to be in the playoffs or around them. That is a brutal stretch to end the year.
When you're in the West, you don't get those Nets, Hornets, Raptors, Wizards reprieves.
Well, that's the stretch. But that's the stretch they're in now.
I'm going to throw the 76ers in there too. You don't get the 76ers, Nets, Hornets, Raptors, Wizards reprieve. But I'm
saying their schedule, Brian, for the last, that's why I looked it up, because I was looking at their schedule as we were talking to see how they've been doing. So they beat the Sixers. They lost to the Hornets. They beat the Hawks. Then they beat the Jazz, the Hornets. They beat the Wizards, and now they beat Detroit. And they've got more games coming up against the Pelicans, the Nets, the Wizards. Like my point is they have to clean up right now because they're already outside looking in. And that closing stretch schedule, even if they have everybody healthy, like 500 in those 22 games is going to be pretty good.
Well, that's why they're trying to get Jimmy Butler.
Another way to put it is their remaining strength of schedule based on opponents' winning percentage is the toughest in the NBA.
Well, there you go.
Just up. It is the toughest in the NBA.
That first round pick, they are willing to trade. The standard is high, but they're offering it around. That's just long story short.
Mm-hmm.
On Monday they play in Cleveland. The Cavs are coming off a challenging road trip. I mentioned that the Pacers have been really good since the new year. The Pacers' only loss since the new year is to Cleveland on this road trip that they just were on. They also beat the Cavs to end their 15-game win streak, or where was it? 13-game win streak, whatever it was. The Cavs won Saturday night in Minnesota, which was a good win because Evan Mobley is banged up right now. And I'm not sure what his status is going to be for Monday. They did catch the Wolves on a back-to-back, and the Wolves kind of melted in the second half of that game. So I'm wondering they might have got lucky there. But the Cavs coming off a tough stretch here, and they're facing the Suns. So that's a great opportunity to test the Suns, just how good the streak is. Bradley Beal's missed the last 2 games with an ankle injury. So we'll see whether he can go on Monday.
Nurk is sick, too. Nurk has got an illness, so that takes a big presence away from the Suns bench, and I do mean glued to it.
I hope
there's an empty seat over there.
I hope Nurk is feeling better. He's been out a while. I like Nurk. I'm not messing. That's another guy I'm not messing with.
Nice fella, but he's now their 4th-string center, who's due $19 million next year.
Yeah, it's a bit of a problem. All right, Bontemps, you're in Miami. There's obviously a game this afternoon. Victor is in town. I'm not sure what'll happen. We always are a little bit late on the pod, and God knows I'm not going to predict what's going to happen today. But Jimmy returned the other night and returned with a press release / fax from his agent, meant to mimic the Jordan return in '96. And what
did he wear?
He wore the Jordan 45 jersey to and from the game. Bontemps. How How's your Jimmy Butler watch in Miami going this weekend?
The drama continues, I would say, is the answer.
And honestly, it's like it's eye roll inducing. We get it, Jimmy. You want out? You're gonna make life difficult on everybody, but I mean, it's just come on, man. Like the whole thing.
Here's the deal with Jimmy Butler. If he wanted to get out of Miami, truly, and I mean, I shouldn't say that. The best chance for him to get out of Miami, to get what he wants, is to get traded somewhere else, would have been to show up starting Friday and play his tail off for the next 3 weeks. Because the problem Jimmy Butler has is that as much as he wants to leave, and as much as, frankly, I think the Heat would like to be over this situation and just move forward as a team, the bottom line is the only teams that are really motivated right now to get him are teams that cannot deliver Miami the requisite stuff necessary to get a deal done. And by the way, the Heat, I don't think, are going into this expected to get a Rudy Gobert trade package for Jimmy Butler. But what they're not going to do is take on 3 years of Bradley Beal. They're not going to put themselves in a position that takes them out of free agency in 26, or more importantly than anything, leaves them in a position where they don't have flexibility to augment the roster going forward. Because, I mean, Brian and I both know Andy Ellsberg, the GM here, have known him for a long time. You look at the way this team has transformed itself over time, the thing the Heat have always prioritized is the ability to make the next move. And if they make some move with Jimmy that doesn't allow him to make the next move, then it doesn't make any sense for them to do that. So the question between now and the trade deadline is, does a deal come along that gives the Heat a modest return that gives them some combination of players that can help them now, or young players, or draft capital, or salary that ends in 26, or all the above in some form, that they say, hey, we can do this for some percentage of $1 for Jimmy's services, and we'll be done with this. But as of now, that trade doesn't exist.
Yeah, and just not have like baggage moving forward. That's the biggest things here. I did love Spoelstra's whole routine of you're all looking for drama. As far as silly questions like what is the temperature of the room or how's everybody feeling, that just sounds so dramatic. We're professionals. We're fine. I'm like, really?
Eric was the dog in the house on fire meme saying this is fine.
And you know how the house got on fire? Because Jimmy's in the corner lighting his farts on fire. And like you're looking for drama.
If Jimmy could figure out how to do that in the locker room, I think he would.
Yeah, but that's the whole story. Like, this is not 2018 Jimmy Butler. He's not 28 anymore. So it's going to be he's got to, I think, play ball to some degree if he wants to get what he wants.
So the thing about Eric Spoelstra is that he's incredibly reliable. We nicknamed him, when I was covering the Heat a decade ago, we nicknamed him the Spobot, because he is so consistent and so focused. And in his interview sessions, for the most part, he's occasionally comes off script, but in his interview sessions, he's very, very steady. Mm-hmm. And he's very hard to, like, he approaches the interview session like he's going to battle. He will literally run into the room and jump onto the dais, and he will like get into a defensive position. And if you like don't have a question in like 20 seconds,
if there's a 5-second pause, he will leave.
He will like bolt off the dais, and you know he is very engaged, and he will absolutely shut you down no matter what. He has no problem shutting you down. So he comes in and doesn't even, well, Bontemps, you were there. He doesn't even wait for a question. He has a soliloquy.
No, he came in with a script ready to read to try to nip in the bud as many questions as he could about the Jimmy situation.
But that's not Spobot. Spobot doesn't change his routine. Yeah. And so it was interesting. So we were on Countdown on Friday. You were in the room, and Bontemps actually did that show a huge solid, because Spo was speaking like moments before we went on the air, and Bontemps sent me the audio. We didn't even have the video up of it yet. This is Bontemps being a good teammate. And literally with Malika, Richard Jefferson, Bob Myers, and I played Spoelstra's audio moments before we went on the air, so that we had the absolute freshest audio. And I even had to read some stuff that Spoelstra said. And I thought Bob Meyer's reaction to that was very telling, because obviously Bob has the history of
lived through these situations.
And he's just like, that's Eric Spoelstra demonstrating this is getting to him, which was the exact opposite of what they wanted to put out. Like, nothing's getting to us. But the fact that he came in with that.
Yeah, I mean, that was obvious. That was obvious the second he did it. But look, like, the Heat, that's my point. The Heat are tired of this situation. Like,
Who
that
isn't?
no, but that's I mean, I'm tired of it. That's my point. Like, everyone is tired of it. They would like it to be over. It's not like this is some situation where, oh, they're dug their heels in and said, man, we're committed to making this work with Jimmy Butler. We're never trading him. This isn't happening. But the problem is, again, there isn't a market for Jimmy Butler. And part of that is because Jimmy Butler is a huge pain to deal with. So if Jimmy Butler decides to play ball for 3 weeks, I think it would help him greatly in his desire to get what he wants. Do I expect that to happen? No, I do not.
Let me just say two things real quick, and then we can move on from Jimmy Butler for this moment. The first thing, and I can't emphasize this enough as somebody who with Shams Charania has been on this story for months now. Jimmy's number one focus is getting traded, preferably to the Phoenix Suns. Everything else is secondary. Not getting traded to Team X, not getting traded to Team Y, getting traded to the Phoenix Suns. And so anything that you want to bring that's rational, if it doesn't mean getting traded to the Suns, Jimmy is not going to be interested in it right now. That's one thing you got to remember out of all of that. And that is the way he is operating. The second thing is that what Bontemps has been saying for months as well, which is that Butler's best move is to just focus in playing. I think that's on the table, but not until after the trade deadline. And so that's one of the things that the Heat have in the back of their mind.
Well, I will say the most interesting thing that was said on Friday night was when Jimmy Butler was asked by Tim Reynolds at the end of his presser, what happens if you're on the team on February 7th? He said, I'm going to hoop, which I did not expect him to say. And frankly, if that is actually true, which, by the way, we're in like the absolute funhouse mirror zone, so like who knows what's true or not, I just was surprised that he even put that out there as a possibility.
Because he is theoretically could be a free agent. And if he's not a free agent, he will be essentially a free agent because he's going to look for an opt-in and trade or a sign and trade. But
and by the way, I do, as I've said the whole time, I do think that's a real option because for all the reasons we've talked about with the difficulty to trade numbers of that size salary-wise, and just frankly, I'm not sure how many teams are going to be that interested in taking on Jimmy midseason. I am not sure that the Heat will find a trade that they can do by the 7th. I think they're going to try very hard to find a trade that they can do by then, but I'm not convinced one's going to materialize.
I would just say this, like, I agree with you. I think and by the way, since Jimmy had his meeting with Mickey Arison on Thursday, there is no doubt an uptick in discussions around Jimmy Butler. The Heat shifted into a new gear after that meeting. I even had a team on Friday call me and say, hey, this team is trying to dump some salary. And they go, hey, we were just talking with a couple of teams who were trying to dump a salary. And they all of a sudden like had to like end our phone calls to go do something bigger. They said, what's going on? And I go, well, I don't know, but I speculate that it has to do with Butler, and not just a direct Butler trade, but 3 and 4 team trades. The point is, I do think the Heat are actually trying, but I'm also going to point something out. And I'm sorry, McMahon, I've roughshot it over you here. As we sit here today, at this exact moment on Sunday morning, the Heat have 20 losses. The Pacers have 19 losses. The Pacers are in 5th place. So if the Heat can't find a trade and they limp their way to February 7th, and then Jimmy Butler is now not incentivized to force his way out, but incentivized to play strongly, to increase his bargaining position come July, this is not a potentially lost situation for Miami.
Look, if that happens, Jimmy Butler balls out from February 7th through however long the Heat are in the playoffs and playoff Jimmy shows up in the spring, that will greatly enhance the market for him this summer. I shouldn't say greatly. It will enhance the market for him for sure this summer. But and look, I do agree that he want to make a trade now. I think everybody here is ready to move on from this whole thing. But it's just a very difficult trade to make for a lot of reasons, and I'm just not sure one's going to materialize.
Yeah, and it really just the full circle thing here is it just gets back to they are not going to do something that is going to be a negative next year and into the future just to get rid of the biggest headache in the league. And Jimmy has successfully made himself again the biggest headache in the league, which you knew was happening. I mean, like literally you knew this was happening as soon as Pat Riley's press conference in the last season ended.
Yeah, I mean, we knew this summer when he didn't get extended that at some point this is going to come to a head, and it's come to a head now.
Yeah. Jimmy Butler's right now, you said enhancing his value. Jimmy Butler's focus right now is enhancing his ability to make a trade. At some point this year, Jimmy Butler has to think about next season. I think right now he'd prefer that that's with the Suns or another team. But the last time Jimmy Butler played a game that he was fully invested in, I mean, he can say whatever he wants, but actions over words, was a month ago in Detroit. And he went for 35, 19, and 10 and 4 steals.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Butler's still a really good player when he's fully locked in.
All right.
On the floor.
On Saturday, the Atlanta Hawks pulled out a win over the Boston Celtics. This was one of those ESPN BPI situations where the Celtics were like high 90%. They were up 3 with 20 seconds left with the ball, I think. Or no, there was
another Jason Tatum missed mid-range jumper at the buzzer too.
Well, also Drew Holiday had a couple of bad moments in the last minute of regulation. But the point is they were in control to get a win over the Hawks. And they totally botched it down the stretch, including Drew Holiday passing up a layup and committing a foul on Trae Young. Anyway, the Hawks won that game in overtime. And the Hawks are now 4-1 this season against the Cavs and the Celtics, and 3-0 on the road. They've swept Boston in Boston. And I got to say, like, the thing about the Hawks, and they're in 6th place now with that win, the Hawks have great perimeter size. And perimeter size bothers the Cavs. They've beaten the Cavs twice. And perimeter size doesn't bother the Celtics as much, but it's a better matchup situation for the...
They can actually match up with Boston in a way a lot of teams can't.
So Boston's having issues. They had another bad shooting game. They are now 8-8 in their last 16, blah, blah, blah. We've talked about them. But I'm going to say, watch out for those Hawkers. You know, I'm not sure if
Hawkers.
You're... Whatever let's say they end up with the 7th or 8th seed. You excited about that if you're Boston or Cleveland? I wouldn't be. Just going to point that out.
Well, and especially not if Quinn's wearing the Sally Jesse Raphaels. I'm just going to tell you that he busted out the red frames, those red frame glasses.
He had put them away, right?
Well, he busted them out for the first time since the Hawks stint in Vegas. And I know that for a fact. I don't have to look it up. Because, fellas, I have a confession to make. I am the cause for the disappearance of the Sally Jesse Raphaels.
Now we know it's going to get aggregated today.
Well, somehow, some way, Quinn was unaware that these red frame glasses that he's been wearing since he's been the Hawks coach were known throughout the league as a Sally Jesse Raphael.
That's unbelievable. I mean, like, I understand he may not be on social media, but it's a very big social media thing.
Yeah. So I know Quinn pretty well. I covered his Jazz teams a lot, and I see him in Vegas, and we're just chatting it up, you know, saying hello, catching up. And I make some just like offhand remark. Bontemps, I think you might have been standing right there. I make some offhand remark about the Sally Jesse Raphaels. And they had no idea what I was talking about.
Do you verify this, Bontemps?
I can verify all of this.
Yeah,
Yes.
My God.
I'm telling you, yeah, and Quinn was. I explained to him like, no, like, dude, your red glasses, like they're like Sally Jesse Raphael, the old talk shows host with the red frames. It's what they're known as around the league. Quinn, Quinn was mortified. I mean, he gives me a serious look. He says, I would never want to do anything that brings attention to myself. I am never wearing those again.
So, I think there are some NBA people who are very, very aware of things, but this does happen. These guys get into these tunnels and their focus, especially a guy like
it's also a very healthy thing for Quinn Snyder to not be
I
on
agree.
social
And
media.
also, like here's the thing, like I know
Or anybody in the
you
NBA,
would think,
frankly.
but like nobody is going to go tell, like, on a team, especially like Quinn, he's a little bit of an intense guy, even though he's a great guy.
Yes.
I'm stunned by this, but I believe it.
Well, I was stunned by it. And then I had some folks with the Hawks basically tell me, yeah, we kind of reached a consensus decision that, of all the things we needed to talk about with Quinn, we decided just to leave the Sally Jesse Raphael conversation.
This is where McMahon's value is. This is why, all these media guys are getting hired by, this is where they're going to bring McMahon in. The Mavericks are going to hire McMahon to go in and tell Luka. He's going to tell him the truth.
Of all the things, of all the teams that
hired
me, the Mavericks would be 30th on that list.
The Mavericks would be 31st, actually.
Yeah, well, every other team is unlikely. The Mavericks, it's a complete impossibility. But, and I'm not kidding you, last night was the first time since they were in Vegas that Quinn went back to the Sally Jesse Raphaels. And Sally brought a little extra juice, brought some luck, and brought him a road win against those big, bad Boston Celtics.
Weather permitting, I'll see Quinn and the Hawks on Monday in New York. The pod runs, and I'll be interested to see if he's wearing them on Martin Luther King Day against the Knicks.
We'll need more reporting on this story.
I will be having a conversation with Quinn about the glasses, one way or the other.
He'll love that.
I remember back in the 90s.
Do it in the press conference. I'm sure he would.
I will not do it in the press conference, but I will have a conversation with him about it for sure. I will report back.
So back in the 90s, I remember I don't remember if it was Chicago Sun-Times or the Tribune, but remember when Dennis Rodman was always changing his hair color?
Of course.
He was like, and sometimes he would go like with the multicolored or whatever. The Sun-Times or the Tribune used to have a little chart they ran that listed the Bulls record when Rodman's hair was different colors. And so I am saying, Atlanta media, this is a great opportunity to start charting the Hawks record.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Twitter account or something out there.
Okay, yeah, maybe there is.
That's all right. I don't know if there is, but I wouldn't be because, like, I'm sorry, it's something like the scouts and stuff. That's where I first heard it. They joke about, but like, if you're a hardcore NBA fan, you're a league pass. Like the Sally Jesse Raphaels were part of the like joy of watching a Hawks game, of seeing Quinn just go frantically crazy over there with these bright red frame glasses on.
And it's also brought, I think, Sally Jesse Raphael to a new era of fans.
I mean, that is certainly true. I mean, there's still, I think, the vast majority of the audience has no idea who she is.
Well, Google it.
I'm sure that Jackson's going to put the side by side up on the YouTube.
Yes, I'm sure Jackson had no idea.
Jackson had no idea who she was.
0% chance.
Jackson just said I had to Google.
Yeah, of course.
That's fine. That's you're supposed to. That's what it's for. But by the way, Quinn knows who Sally Jesse Raphael is. That's what's most important.
And by the way, over the last 19 games, the stretch that the Celtics are 10-9 in, they're now 25th in 3-point percentage. The attempts have gone down a little bit from 50 down to 46, just under 47. And yet they're still 7th in offense and 4th in defense and 4th in net rating over that span. So they've had some big wins in there. It's been a weird stretch. Obviously, it's about a quarter of the season, but I still am not that concerned. But it is pretty weird that they've had this long of a shooting slump.
On Friday night, when they played the Magic, and the Magic were missing 6 guys, and Paolo Banchero was still on a minutes limit. When they played the Magic, they took their fewest number of threes in a half of the season in the first half of that game. And then the second half, they sort of went back to their standard. And the players after the game talked about, the better balance that it was, not so much in the number of threes, but how they sought to establish some presence on the interior and then move to the exterior, basically use the 3-pointer in conjunction with the interior scoring, not as the be all end all, because, very well known, they came into the weekend. I don't know where they're at now. They were averaging about 8 or 9 more threes per game than twos. And so, nobody is saying that the 3-point shot isn't awesome and was a driving factor in their team's victory in the title last year. But I do think that the balance is the factor. And like Joe Mazzulla is, full bore. He doesn't, but like it was interesting to see them change their game plan a little bit. And so let's keep an eye on that.
Quinn, peering through those sallies last night, saw a whole lot of Boston bricks. 15 of 52. That's 28.8% from 3-point range. Exactly half of their field goal attempts were threes. And look, Mazzulla's thing, and it certainly has been proven right over time, is that the math will break the Celtics' way over the course of time. But yeah, it's hard to win games when you're shooting 28.8% from three on that level of volume.
Sure. Cavs 7 games up in the standings right now. All right, Bontemps, you got to get to work. McMahon, you got to. Are you cooking up a big breakfast for those kids? Eggs, bacon.
I think I've got a bunch of dishes to do, but I think department handles the cooking.
All right. Thank you, Jackson, our producer. Thank you, McMahon and Bontemps.
You'll get some croissants for breakfast.
No, I'm not there yet. I'm in LA right now. It's very early.
Then you're head to Paris, baby.
Yeah. Well, next time we'll speak, we'll be overseas and hopefully have some good stuff there. God knows what these two guys are going to come up with in the next couple of days. Thank you for watching, listening to the Hoop Collective. Another 2-3 days, I might have this laryngitis totally gone, guys. It's going to be very exciting.
Just in time to say, pardon-moi.
No,
how do you say adios amigos in France?
It's amigos is a Spanish word. I would say.
What? Hold on. Shh. Say it again.
Au revoir, mon ami.
Au revoir, mon ami.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we're in it.
Okay, but we have to use the actual sign off too.
Oh. Adios amigos.
Thank you.